Well, thank you everybody for being here. This means a lot.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I know some people will be trickling in as I go on. So this is very, very special for me to have a number of people here who have been an integral part of my rebirth and my life, and I like to thank those people very much. I usually don't have too much of a difficulty getting up and sharing my dark past and at times dark present with others. But I put a little pressure on myself, and today was experiencing a little bit of nervousness. And throughout the day, just kind of doubting whether or not I was qualified to come up and give this talk, thinking that there would be someone else more qualified to tell my story. And so I reached out to a few people who are very close to me, who I've had the opportunity to, over the last several years, rely upon in times of need and grow to trust. And one of those people was Deacon Chris, who I sent a message to saying, I'm nervous, I don't know if I can do it. He goes Old Testament on me. And cites prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Moses, all who were called to do great things, either at a young age or because they were just unwilling to, or fearful of the prospect of doing the Lord's work or answering the Lord's call. And I really appreciate that. Thank you. But, well, the follow-up to that, though, is, you know what the ultimate fate of those guys are? Moses goes around the desert for 40 years with a group of people who he gets basically out of hell. And, they turn their backs on him, and he gets so close to the promised land, the land of milk and honey, and he doesn't get it. And Isaiah, you know what happens to Isaiah? Isaiah ends up getting sawed in half with a wooden saw by his own people. So, while comforting momentarily, so I'll begin, and I'll put you in a little space, paint a picture for you. It was, let's see here, December, maybe late November 2011. I was about 45 days sober. I had nothing to my name, was indebted to an uncle of mine who borrowed me $2,000 so that I could get a place, put a security deposit down, and pay my first month's rent here in Pacific Beach. Where I'm from, Wisconsin, that would be a year's rent. So I basically have nothing to my name, 45 days sober. I raid my piggy bank, grab all the quarters, dimes, and nickels that I can, and take a 20-minute walk down to a taco shop here in Pacific Beach. I order 5 rolled tacos with guacamole and shredded cheese. I'm sitting there in front of these tacos, nothing to my name. My life is an absolute mess, full of confusion and doubt. I have no idea where my life is heading. And I felt this great peace. I had nothing other than this new trust in what God had in store for me, not having a clue what it might be. I had 45 days of sobriety, which I never thought possible, and I had 5 rolled tacos with guacamole and shredded cheese, and that was awesome. Since then, life at times gets more complex and complicated by various things, but I always look back, or not always, but I look back on that moment and think of, that's really all I need, just the love of God and sobriety, and with that, I'm very, very grateful. I took my first drink when I was 17 years old, and at the time my friend and I were walking to a party. It was a friend who was 2 years older than me. We were walking to a party of older college kids, and he handed me a couple of beers. I stuffed a few in my cargo pockets, and he said to me as I cracked the beer open, he said, "Don't think so much about what this is going to taste like. Just think about how this is going to make you feel." And I got pretty drunk that night. I took my last drink when I was 26 years old. I didn't care what it tasted like. I didn't care really what it was. I just no longer wanted to feel the way that I was feeling. And in that time, in a relatively actually short drinking career, I went from just a drink or two to socialize with friends, to problem drinking, to alcoholic drinking, to seeking drugs, alcohol, whatever it was to change the reality that was in front of me. So although you may not suffer from addiction, of drug addiction, alcoholism, some of you may. Some of you likely are close to someone who does. You may suffer or perhaps have an unhealthy seeking of what St. Thomas Aquinas would say are the four things that we seek in place of God, that being power, wealth, pleasure, and honor. I have a propensity to value honor and pleasure quite a bit, but I like to dabble in all four every now and then. So tonight I want to share with you a little bit about substance abuse, mostly that being around my experience, strength, and hope in what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. The great gift that I've been given through a fellowship of others who have recovered from a similar state of seemingly hopelessness, as well as the graces provided to me by the Catholic Church, and really a personal relationship that I've come to know as a result of staying sober one day at a time. And in that, a lot of my call has been to give back a small portion of the gift that I've received. There's no way that I can ever repay those who have helped me and continue to help me so much through the process, but as per the 12th step of the 12 steps, aiming to help alcoholics achieve sobriety as a result of a spiritual awakening. So just a couple of statistics as we get started to lay kind of the foundation and where we're at as a country and as a society around addiction, alcoholism, and drug abuse. Nearly 1 in every 10 Americans suffers from alcoholism, which is a pretty alarming stat. In fact, I just read about a month ago a review or an article online that said that my hometown in Wisconsin is the #1 highest density population of alcoholics, or people that suffer from alcohol abuse, having about like 25% of people who have not suffered from alcoholism, but have been affected by it. And it's amazing and alarming how many other towns nearby are in that top 10 list. In addition, other drug abuse has really taken over. In fact, the overdose by opiates, which are found in both legal and illegal drugs, prescribed painkillers and heroin, to name a few, have taken over car accidents as the #1 cause of death in America. About 75 Americans dying each day as a result of overdose, which is alarming, amazing, sad. But those numbers unfortunately aren't getting any better. However, there is a solution that I've been granted one day at a time, and I hope to share that hope with you. When I first stepped foot into an environment where people were recovering from alcoholism and drug addiction, I had very little hope. And I stand in front of you sharing a little bit of hope that I have, a lot of hope, amazing amount of hope, the good news, if you will. So, my drinking career started out, like I said, at the age of 17. Now, addiction is a spiritual disease that centers in the mind and goes after fine minds and fine hearts. I know that because I've seen so many people, and I'm sure you have as well, who have suffered from alcoholism and drug addiction. And it's really an addiction that has a twofold, manifestation. One that reveals itself in a craving, the second that reveals itself in a mental obsession. I'll illustrate that by telling you a little bit about what it's like when, without spiritual help, when I drink, I tend to, after I have one, there aren't enough drinks available to satisfy me. So I used to go out with some of my friends who could drink like gentlemen. I'll call them normies. And what would happen, I always feel like I played the victim of what I would call tavern economics, and that out of generosity, and brokenness, and not any kind of spiritual brokenness, like financial brokenness, I would buy the first round of drinks for my friends. If there are 5, 6, 7 guys going out with me, that would mean that I would in turn then get the next 5, 6, 7 rounds of drinks. But what ends up happening is that after I finish my first drink, all of my buddies have about 3/4 of their drink left. They're nursing it. And so I sneak away, I go to the bathroom. On the way to the bathroom, I take a shot from the bartender. Go to the bathroom, on my way back, I take a shot from the bartender and hope that no one saw me. That kind of behavior and that kind of drinking pattern, as I found that those close to me didn't really drink, nor did they do drugs the way that I did, made me deviate from the people that really cared about me and find solace in friends that were more or less just drinking companions. I would go to work, on the way home from work, or halfway through my shift, I would get that craving that I was telling you about, looking forward to the next drink and the next fix. I would stop at the liquor store on my way home from work. Now, mind you, I had an 8-minute commute from work to home. Stop at the liquor store, see the same person that I would see nearly every day, buy a 32 ounce of Gatorade, preferably purple Gatorade, but sometimes I would go with the light blue Arctic Ice Gatorade, and also buy a bottle of vodka. I would chug most of the Gatorade, or about maybe a third of the Gatorade, pour the vodka into the Gatorade while my car was parked in the parking lot, so that I had a little drink for my ride home, because I couldn't wait the 8 minutes to get home. And what would happen, usually at the end of the night, I would drink the night away by myself and go to sleep in a blackout, wake up the next morning in pain, mostly a kind of psychological or spiritual pain I wouldn't recognize at the time, but a pain that left me feeling, I've got to stop. This can't be good. Today is going to be the day that I don't drink. Today is going to be the day that I give it up. I'd go to work, hungover, not performing well at all, and a few hours into my work shift, I would start feeling a little bit better. A little coffee, a little water, something to eat, and I would say to myself, this has got to be just a misunderstanding. What was I thinking? Maybe overdid it a little bit last night. Tonight will be different. So on my way home from work, I would stop at the liquor store, meet the same guy I met the night before, buy a bottle of Gatorade, a bottle of vodka, drink a third of the Gatorade in my car while it's parked, and you know the rest. And that pattern and that cycle of addiction was reality for me. I had lost nearly everything that was of importance to me, including relationships, educational opportunities, professional opportunities, and my life at the young age of 26 seemed like there was very little hope. Mostly because of the fact that I could never imagine my life being good with alcohol, and I could never imagine my life being good without alcohol. It took reaching, for me, what was my bottom, a moment and an instance where my roommate at the time kind of told my girlfriend at the time that all that I had been doing, the drinking behind her back, the lying, even the unfaithful behavior to her and towards other women, and I had been, felt like I was a victim of the truth, what was really happening. But so I hit a low point where she no longer was going to be putting up with my behavior. Although that low point wasn't low enough, I went, after we had broken up, about another month and a half before I decided to quit. I thought that I could just kind of pretend that I was sober and get away with it. Unfortunately, while at the same time I was kind of doing good deeds for her to make up for my unfaithful, and my deceitful behavior. So I was editing some of her papers for her master's program, and she sent me over a paper to look at, to edit. Said, I'm going to go for a run. Why don't you take a look at it? So I, doing what I do, light up a bowl of marijuana and then get to work on it. Now my apartment reeks like marijuana. She swings by with a smile on her face that dims immediately upon walking in and smelling what my apartment smelled like, and looked me in the eye and said, "Scott, you are absolutely hopeless, man." And I knew it. I was absolutely hopeless. She left, and I drank that night and smoked more marijuana that night. The next day, I rode my bike down to the bay at Crown Point, where I pushed my bike pedals, my bike tires, through the heavy sand. Very gloomy day. Actually, it was probably a beautiful day, but to me, it was a very gloomy day. I found a place in the beach or on the sand where I could collapse. I pulled out my phone, which seemed to weigh about 500 pounds. I called my mom, I called my dad, and I called three of my closest friends. And they knew what was going on with me for the most part, but I told them exactly how bad my life had gotten and that I needed help. That day was October 9th, 2011, and I haven't had a drink since then. And I'm very grateful for that. So, I needed some help, some serious help that I didn't believe existed. I called, like I said, I made those phone calls. I told my friends, my mom and my dad, that I would call them each day, be accountable to something. And you don't have to answer the phone every day, let it go to voicemail, but I'm going to just check in and let you know that I hopefully didn't drink that day and did not drink the night before. The next day I showed up to a meeting, and meetings that take place here in San Diego and all over the world on a regular basis, where fellow recovering drunks meet and get together and share their experience, strength, and hope. I walked to the place where the meeting's at a church down the road. And it's a meeting that takes place upstairs. I get to the place, I hear laughter, and I hear joy, and I'm like, this is not the right, cannot be the right place. There is no way that if these people know how I feel, that they have any kind of joy left in them. No way. So I go up there, I sit through the meeting, again, hopeless, no idea what my life's going to look like. Yeah, I'd made several attempts at sobriety before, and none of them stuck. And after the meeting, this young man, well actually he's not that young, but this man came up to me afterwards. Probably the last guy I would have guessed would be the one to come offer me help. A gruff looking man, his name is Michael. He looks me in the eye. I felt like he was looking me in the soul. And he said, "It's going to be okay. You don't have to drink again." And I believed him for the moment. He said, "Just stick around, keep coming back. You and I are going to get coffee. And we're going to get coffee a lot. We're going to drink a lot of coffee." And so, by the grace of God, this man, who seemingly had nothing to do other than be at my whim whenever I needed him, which was all the time, was available, and we would sit and we would go to a meeting, and then we would go get coffee for a couple of hours. And he knew I didn't have any place to go, so although I was sick of hearing him talk about all the things that were killing me, he knew I didn't have anywhere to go, so I couldn't be like, okay, well I've got something to do, because I had nothing to do. The best thing in my life were 5-roll tacos. So I got to get to know the nature of the disease of alcoholism a bit, and he shared with me his experience, strength, and hope, and was my sponsor. This is where a lot of the overlap between what happens on these grounds in the Catholic Church and through the 12-step program overlap. There's a lot, but that sponsorship, that one person helping another kind of go through the process of what they've gone through before, such as when young men and women come to be initiated into the Catholic Church or the sacramental life of the Church through baptism, reconciliation, confirmation. When they go through that process, they have a sponsor in the same way. And I found that having this man and other people, men and women who were there to share their hope with me, and the fellowship that united us, really the brokenness, the weeks, the wounds that united us, gave me strength to make it through one day at a time. Eventually, this man, Michael, said, "Scott, you're going to have to fearlessly consider what God means to you. Either God is everything or God is nothing. What is your, what do you think? What's your course of action here?" He said, "You have two options, Scott. You can either go about plotting to the bitter end your life, the way you had it, gripping onto the bottle and gripping onto the drugs, which will probably land you in either one of 4 places: hospitals, institutions, jails, or even worse, a graveyard. Or you can seek spiritual help." I told him I would get back to him. I'm not exactly sure. And I think that some people here can relate to that as well. So I started coming here to St. Brigid's, now hopefully trying to get back the good graces of my ex-girlfriend at the time, who was ardently Catholic. And I had gone through the sacraments as a child. I was baptized as an infant, have no recollection of that day. I went through First Communion, reconciliation, and confirmation throughout grade school and high school. I was coming here to young adult Bible studies. I met this young man named Brock, who took an interest in my life and was there for me. And he would ask questions. He wasn't that weird as I thought that all of us Catholics are. And him and I one day were on our way up to a UCLA football game at the Rose Bowl. And on the drive up there, this is maybe a couple weeks into sobriety, I shared with him my dark secret. I was nervous. I wasn't sure if I was going to receive love or condemnation from that. And, fortunately, I received a lot of love from that. In fact, he actually opened up about a little bit about the stuff that he was struggling with and what he was going through and those difficulties in his life. And the bond that we created really nurtured throughout that. He asked me questions about where I was at. He was available to me to answer questions about the church, about what a life of a Catholic actually really means, or what it means to be Christian, or doing good deeds and all this stuff. And I didn't jump into the stuff like, what is my sex life going to look like? I didn't want to go there yet. But we went through all that stuff, and he was a great friend, had a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and I had a personal relationship with Brock. And that was, one man helping another, just like Michael had done for me and so many have done for me throughout that. So I'm going through, meeting these people, and we're having discussions about people who are going through being, as adults, making the decision to become Catholic, going through baptism as an adult, or going through receiving their first communion, going through reconciliation and confirmation. And I was amazed, I was awestruck that these people were able to experience this as adults, making a willful choice to follow and surrender themselves to God. Whereas, as a child, I just was going through and doing what my parents did and told me to do. It took me a while. I didn't realize it at the time, but what was happening as I was working those steps of recovery is that I was actually going through and walking through in a very practical and tangible way what I had experienced through the sacraments of the church at that time. Now, Michael, my sponsor, who, again, a gruff man and a man that I am forever indebted to, moved to Hawaii, and I took the nerve, it took a lot of nerve, but I asked a very good-looking, handsome, and a young man named Robert, we'll call him Robert, to be my sponsor. Walk me through this. I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, and then made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. Now, in 12-step recovery, that God or higher power is kind of used in general terms. The program, and these programs are multiple ones available, are very seeker-sensitive, attracting those who have a variety of different faith backgrounds and things like that. So sometimes the topic of God is not one that is easiest for people to grasp as they come in. But through the grace of first, a lot of people that were very close to me in recovery, and also those who shared their hope with me in the Catholic Church, I was able to get to know Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, my higher power. And as a result, kind of found that as I was going through these first 3 steps of recovery, I was really giving myself, kind of renewing myself and rebirthing myself through the grace of God and in the baptismal waters of new life. Step 4 is kind of one of the big ones. Now, step 4 I made a fearless and searching moral inventory of ourselves. The first part of this process is very simple. We make a list of all the people that we hold resentments towards. I could do that in no time. I was holding very dearly to a lot of the resentments that I still had. Difficulties in relationships and families, and even with institutions. I went to school and university in New York City on a debate scholarship in college, and that lasted 3 semesters. As after high school, I began drinking and doing drugs on a regular basis. Stopped going to classes, but was kind of lost a really great opportunity. Full tuition debate scholarship in the city of New York, free living. In fact, I was getting a monthly stipend to go to school there. And was traveling the country, going to some of the nicest colleges in the country, and competing against some of the smartest college kids in the country. But my pursuit of alcohol and drugs just trumped that at the time. But I was still very resentful at the institution of higher education and secondary schools. So that was one of the things on my list. That process, through the aid of my sponsor, was thorough, and at times fearful and other times fearless. I also, through the process, was asked to make a list of all the things that I feared, which, not necessarily like spiders and all that stuff, but those fears, those things that really make my gut wrench, which seemed to, after a little examination, rule my life. I also made a list of my sex inventory, all the, sexual misconduct that I participated in. I actually thought that, I still have that, I thought that I'd share a little bit about with So here now, taking on the next part of that is a little bit more difficult, and this is where throughout the process I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of people unwilling to take ownership or kind of clean up their side of the street, which unfortunately has left people relapsing and not finding the real solution in the spiritual awakening that lies at the end of the whole process. But the crux of the fourth step is taking ownership of those resentments, those relationships that have failed, or those angsts that I was holding so tightly and dearly to me, and writing that down. Through the aid of my sponsor, I was able to do that. Now, the fifth step is where we admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Catholics might consider that like reconciliation. And that process, although difficult to kind of come to that, that honesty with another man, was very freeing. I shared with my sponsor all the crap that I had written down that I just pretty much vomited onto these pages. He shared a little bit about his stuff. I made an appointment with a priest to then, to share, come one-on-one with the face of God, share what I had been through, my difficulties. And when that process was over, I had a new swagger in my step. It was like all of the crap that I was just throwing on my back was lifted by sharing it with another person and giving it to God. Steps 6 and 7, through prayer and meditation, became ready to have God remove all these defects of character, and then humbly asked Him to remove my shortcomings. That a process which, as in the time, thought, okay, all I have to do is ask God to remove my shortcomings, and humbly ask Him to do so. A process that I found a little bit more difficult and a little bit more intricate than actually on the surface. Now, one of my favorite prayers is what we would call the 7-step prayer, and that goes, "My Creator, I am now willing that you shall have all of me, the good and the bad. I ask that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen." And that kind of, through this process of reconciliation, gave me this understanding that through the merciful love that I was receiving from God through the 5th step, if I took the process and really lived out the process of asking God to relieve my shortcomings, that I had some part to do in going out and extending that mercy to other people. And that's kind of where the 8th and the 9th step come in. Now, these are steps that are not easy, and through the aid of a great sponsor, I was able to do that. And that's really the process of making reparations for the wrongs that I had done. In Catholic terminology, we call this doing penance. And in recovery terminology, we call this making amends. I made a list of all the persons that I had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. I was willing to make amends to some people, but there were some people that had really, really wronged me, man. My roommate that told on me, that told the truth to the girlfriend at the time, I was not ready to make amends to him. I had an idea that I needed to make amends to some people in my life, my parents especially, for putting them through a lot of trials and sleepless nights. Certainly my ex-girlfriend, Angie, who I had done a lot of wrong to and put through basically hell. So this first process of these amends came to, again, making a list, and then became willing to make amends to them all. Like I said, I was not ready to make amends to them all, but it was suggested of me that those people who I was not ready to kind of come to terms with, that I prayed for weeks on end. Even if I didn't mean it. And I did not mean it. I said I was praying for some of my parents that I did not, I did not mean this, Lord, but I will pray for them that they may have peace and have everything that they ask for out of life. And after time, those prayers actually kind of came to be sincere and genuine. And I actually meant for their good and for their well-being. That made it a little bit easier than come face to face and make some of those difficult amends. I'll share a story I was about a little over a year sober, and came time to make amends with my ex-girlfriend. We set a date a time where we could meet, and kind of told her what we were going to be doing. I wanted to sit down with her and just kind of share with her. And so she came over to my apartment. We sat down. Now, this was the amends, or one of the amends that took a lot of preparation. In fact, my sponsor and I, writing letters, do not send letters, of what I would say, being as defenseless as I possibly could be, without defending myself, trying to justify myself in any way, but sincerely just asking for forgiveness, and how can I make this up to you? Now, a lot of my amends required honesty, because what I was asking forgiveness for was dishonesty, deceit, and manipulation. So I knew that in the process of making amends, I was going to be asked, did you cheat on me? And over the time, or over the years, I always said, no, I didn't, no. And she knew that I had, and I knew that I had. But I never was able to admit it. And I knew she was going to ask me this. We practiced it, we role-played it, which I'm grateful for. It was a little weird, but I'm very grateful for it. And we sat down, I made my amends. Do you have any questions? She said, yeah, have you ever cheated on me? And I couldn't bring myself to be honest. A little over a year sober, I was a man of virtue now, doing the right thing, going to church every Sunday, giving my time, being of service. And the one thing that I practiced, I was incapable of doing. She left. This air of dissatisfaction was not spoken, but it was there. I stayed. I went to work that night. The next morning I called my sponsor and I said, that didn't necessarily go as we had practiced. I need to do something about this. This is not right. I need to, I said, if I ever do find myself being deceitful or dishonest with you, I will do my best to, as soon as possible, tell you and be honest and share the truth. And so I called her the next day after calling my sponsor what had happened and telling him. And she knew what I was coming over for. I came over and I said, so I was dishonest with you. I had cheated on you. And then I started justifying it, or I tried to defend myself, and using the what some might call the gift of the silver tongue. And she wanted none of that. And it was all, and justifiably so. She was very angry. How could you do this to me? You're never going to change. You are hopeless. And I was devastated. Absolutely devastated. I drove home. Actually, I drove over to my friend Brock's house because I needed to be with somebody. On the way home, I called my sponsor, and I was in tears. And I was stuck in this place where, what is this all about? If this is not working out for me, God, what are you doing? And I told him what was going on, and his response was pretty simple. He said, Scott, do you believe in God? I said, yeah, I believe in God. Okay, do you believe in a God that's all powerful, all loving, and all caring? I said, yeah, I believe. That's the God I believe in. Well, what are you worried about? God's gotten you through this. You're sober. It's going to be all right. And it turned out that it was all right. Time healed those wounds. And by the grace of God, and by stepping out of the situation a bit, and just giving it time, those wounds did heal. And have healed, and we're in a place now where the story doesn't end in me getting back with her, by the way. But the ending is better. Although I couldn't imagine my life being good, both without alcohol, drugs, her, all these things that I had planned for myself. You could call it our daily bread. Catholics, we call it the Eucharist. Those things that maintain our spiritual well-being. And that process was, first asked through prayer and meditation. First continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. It's a principle that I try my best to live by and do, as our Catholic friend St. Ignatius would say, a kind of a daily examination of conscience, a daily examine that just reviews the day, what the day was like, if we had done wrong, or if we need to make amends in the process, do it as soon as possible, and ask God to just kind of take control and take the wheel. In addition, seeking through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him. Praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out, the 11th step. Something that, again, gives that kind of daily nourishment, that daily bread. And I like to play the director. Michael, my first sponsor, he would call me air director, which really, really made me mad. I would try to, I wanted to manipulate my life the way that it had to be, the way that I wanted it to be. Everything has to go my way. In fact, I was like 3 weeks sober, and I'm sorry for getting a little bit off time schedule here, but about 3 weeks sober, and I went in for a job interview at an insurance company that Brock was working at. He had gotten me a job, an entry-level, not a job, but an interview. And I went into the interview. I did pretty terribly at the interview. I didn't do all that well. I thought I was going to just walk in there and I was going to do great. The gift of the silver tongue. And I left there figuring that either going to offer me the job that day, because I had gone through like a couple series of interviews, or I didn't get the job. Although they had told me also that at the time, if I did get the job offered, I was going to be subject to a drug test, which a hair follicle test. When I got sober, my hair and everything about me was really weird and awkward. My hair looked like a clown, kind of. It was all bushy, and I was about 15 pounds heavier, and everything was just weird. So I had this long hair that I was like, okay, well now I'm stuck in a catch-22. I'm either going to not get the job, and I'm going to be angry about that, and angry at God, and how is this supposed to work out? How's my life going to be good without getting this job? Or they were going to have me come in and do a drug test, and they were going to find out that within the last 90 days I had smoked dope and done cocaine, and I'm going to embarrass both myself and especially my friend Brock. So unfortunately, I did not get that job. Through the process of getting sober, I also made it very important to kind of put an emphasis on regaining my education and finishing my degree. I had gone back to school at San Diego, or at Mesa College here in San Diego, 1 semester, 2 semesters. Then I applied to a 4-year university, San Diego State, USD, Cal State San Marcos. I didn't get in. I know in another semester, and every semester I could, I was applying to these 4-year universities, knowing that unless I get into one of these schools, my life is going to suck. How am I supposed to get financial freedom and have all the things in life that I want if I don't get into school? And trying to work my Catholic angle at USD, that didn't work. And, get letters of recommendations from people that I hardly knew, that didn't work. And so I never got into a 4-year college throughout all these times that I was applying for. Gratefully, just this last December, I started a degree completion program at Point Loma Nazarene University, which, had I gotten into one of those colleges, all these other great things that I'm going to tell you about probably wouldn't have happened. In addition, I applied for a job about a year ago as the Director of Young Adult Ministry for the Diocese of San Diego, a job this is definitely where my will and God's will were 100% on the same path. And I went into the final round of interviews, 5 candidates left, and this has got to be God repaying me for the service that I have done for the community, and being a good boy and staying sober and doing all these things that a good Catholic guy does, and how can they not pick me? This has got to be God's will for me. This is why I didn't get into school, right? No, I didn't get that job. So the 12th step of Alcoholics Anonymous, or the 12th step of recovery, is complex. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Kind of 2 parts to that. Just like the sacrament of confirmation, we stand given the gifts of the Holy Spirit, given the gifts of sobriety, to give those gifts back. I've learned that my sobriety, if I can't give it back, I can't keep. And that's true of a lot of the gifts that I've been given, and that God has kind of nourished within me. So I've been blessed with opportunities throughout the last 4 or 5 years to meet other people who have been in a place of seemingly the same type of hopelessness and despair that I've been through, and have been able to walk and journey with them on the process. I'm very, very grateful for those people who sometimes they stay sober and sometimes they don't. but grateful for what I get to learn and how I get to experience God's love through them. There's probably the people who will never really disappoint me are those people that I can walk with and journey with, and they can mess up a lot, and I can mess up a lot, but this is like an unconditional love that I wish I could experience with everyone that surrounds me. Now, God has also put some really amazing things into my life, even just over the last year. I've had the opportunity and have founded a nonprofit organization called Catholic in Recovery, which seeks to share hope with those that are in a place of hopelessness that I described before. And as a result, I've just within the last few months, I've gotten IRS nonprofit status through that, and I have no idea where that's going to go. No clue. Although I do know kind of its mission, and that being kind of which my own personal mission statement is: stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety, including those who suffer from drug abuse and drug addiction, psychological dependencies such as gambling addiction, overeating, eating disorders, shopping addictions, phone addictions, pornography addictions, etc. You name it. The process of the cycle of addiction is very similar in all those. The process of recovery is very similar in all those. Even if you don't necessarily identify yourself as an addict to anything, I think the recovery, as I mentioned, the process of recovery, very similar to what we do here in the Catholic Church as we live a sacramental life. So, in addition, last October, a few years after I didn't get that job that had to be God's will, I got a message from a woman named Lisa Hendy, who reached out to me, and she is the editor-at-large at Ave Maria Press, a Catholic publisher out of Notre Dame, and she asked me if I'd be interested in writing a book. And I was like, yeah. Now, years before, like 10 years ago, I was in rehab, and I had kind of jotted together, I've got this page or two of this like chicken scratch note that if I had titled it, probably would have read, "If you had my problems, you'd be a drunk too." All these reasons for why I was justified in my behavior, my addiction, and my demise. So I thought about writing a book before, and I also kind of had this idea that maybe upon reaching this old wisdom or this old age, years and years down the road, maybe that might be a possibility. But first of all, I'm too much of a procrastinator, and second of all, this is not. But so yes, I am excited to write a book. Upon putting a proposal together over the last few months, I was given a contract by them to write a book, which will be published in the fall of 2017. So I look forward to see what happens with that. It's unbelievable. When I first started working with Robert, he had me make a list, before we got into any of this stuff, make a list of 10 things that you would like a life of sobriety to look like. What do you imagine, if you could have the best life, what would you like it to look like? 10 things. We've made a lot of lists together. A lot of them have given me a lot of good, including my fiance. That list, even now, as I look at it, is relatively puny to what life has revealed itself to be. It's absolutely amazing how staying sober one day at a time and just very imperfectly surrendering myself over to the will of God has brought about amazing things in my life. Even though it didn't include the job I wanted, the schooling opportunities that I wanted, the wealth that I've wanted, all these things, still find some happiness. So in about 100 days, I will get married to my fiance, and we're getting married. We're actually going to have the reception right here. We'll probably have our first dance right where Deacon Mike is sitting right now. And what's amazing is that she's never seen me take a drink or do a drug.
Has she ever seen you in a tie?
She's seen me in many a tie. So, and for that's a miracle. That is an absolute miracle. And it's not. And a miracle that even guacamole and shredded cheese can't make any better. So, thank you very much. And as mentioned, I am open to questions.
If you have questions, please come over here to the microphone, and so everyone can hear you.
Just wanted to ask you, Scott, did any of your family members participate in Al-Anon at all?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes, my addiction is in my family has made itself known before I was around. My dad's only sibling, his sister, passed away about 10 or 15 years ago from drug overdose. My stepmom's father died an active alcoholic about 5 years ago, and so that pain has been around. There's also other instances, but those are the most blatant and obvious ones where that idea of alcoholism or addiction has found itself in their lives. My stepmom and father had gone through Al-Anon and had attended to varying degrees and for a long time without even my knowledge Al-Anon meetings, and I'm sure found a lot of peace in the process as I was active in my addiction. That their loved ones going through that darkness that come and find hope to find some hope through that. So I would refer anyone in that category to pick up some information there, or I'd be happy to speak with them as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. I'm glad to hear that.
Thanks.
Thanks for your share. I identify with a lot. I have actually two questions I want to peel off of what she offered. I'm an alcoholic. I think we shared a familiar fellowship.
Yeah.
Our sobriety dates are pretty close as well. How do you carry the message of recovery to your family and in those family circles?
Yeah.
And then my second question is, in your 11th step, how do you practice prayer and meditation today?
Thanks, great question. So the family, and this could be another talk, this could be another 45-minute talk. It's hard to do that, especially living 2,000 miles away from most of my family. So, and like I've said before, I have always been able to, I thought, spin my life and things in a positive way that, all is good. So when I had gotten help, it was not, for good reason. There was a little bit of hesitation in saying, okay, well, Scott's good now. He's on the right path. So it took a while, and it still is taking some time to find healing in my family relationships. Some have healed faster than others, and some are finding amazing moments of healing opportunities. Last month, I was able to attend the wedding of my stepsister, and that was a relationship that was difficult and is still in the process of healing. But through opportunities and moments where I show up sober and try to have a good attitude and see what I can bring to the table in instances like that, those are healing a bit over time. Your second question regarding step 11 in prayer and meditation. My prayer life is very, I would say, well, first, unfortunately, very depending on if I'm in one of those spiritual highs or spiritual lows. But the prayer that I try to do most often is just first, like I mentioned, doing a daily exam and where I'm at, and reviewing my day with God alongside, and sharing Him where I'm at. And I try to be honest in my prayers. My prayers aren't necessarily, probably my best prayers are when I don't feel all that prayerful, and when I'm just, God, I am angry right now, and I don't like this, and just kind of bringing to God what I've got, and trying to be open to knowledge of His will for me, and ask for the power to carry that out. So I found a lot of amazing tools and practices through both recovery and through the church. Sometimes I'll go months without praying a rosary. Other times I'll pray several rosaries a week, and that process of just repetition and just kind of being available and being able to listen puts my own agenda in prayer aside, and hopefully in times opens up the opportunity to listen to God. Other situations like that as well. So, yeah, thank you. I would say my what you would call my spirituality and my fiance's spirituality, very, very different. She's really holy. And I just try to get by sometimes. Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you very much.
So there are some little placards as well as a piece of paper which will give you the opportunity to both make a few comments regarding the talk tonight, or also if you are interested in more information or interested in information regarding supporting my nonprofit Catholic in Recovery, you can fill that out, return it in some fashion. There's a basket over there that you can anonymously turn it in or provide whatever kind of information you feel comfortable with. But, I'm very grateful for the community here at St. Brigid's. It's saved my life, so thank you very much.